Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Sano, and I am with the Lower Columbia Nature Network. I'm here with my colleague, Jane Tessner-Kleiner, the program manager for Lower Columbia Nature Network. And we are here to welcome you to the first session of Taking Learning Outside, making the most of your school's outdoor learning spaces. And this series is in partnership with ESD 112, Lower Columbia School Gardens, based in Longview, WSU Extension Master Gardener School Garden Coordinator program, and also retired science teacher and school board member Mark Watron, and us, the Lower Columbia Nature Network. We're excited to bring this partnership training to you to support your work with outdoor learning. This is training number 1 of 3 in the series. And in these 3 sessions, together with asynchronous learning activities, you can earn up to 6 STEM clock hours upon completion. So if you haven't filled out the paperwork for that, let us know and we will work to get that information for you. So session number 1 today, we've got Ian Thompson. We'll hear from him in just a few minutes from the Lower Columbia School Gardens, focused on outdoor classroom management. The next session is February 6th, and that will be led by Becca Martin, who is with the WSU Extension Master Garden School Coordinator. And so she will be talking about using your outdoor learning spaces. So some of you have wonderful outdoor spaces, and some of you just have grass and trees, but she's going to help you figure out how to use what you have and make more of that. And then in session 3, we'll be joined by Mark Watron, and he will be just kind of bridging that link between classroom learning and the outdoors. So how to make those connections to curriculum. And then we have some other sessions that are in the works that will be coming up. One thing to put on your calendar, we're going to have John Muir-Laws, who's going to be leading a session on nature journaling as a tool for outdoor learning. So that's March 21st from 4 to 5:30, and that's really geared towards educators, classroom teachers, environmental educators. So we'd love to have you join us for that, and we'll provide more information shortly on that. So to get us started, we want to just get a feel for who's in the room today. I know many of you put that in the chat. But we're going to launch a poll here in just a moment, and we'll just have you share just briefly some information about yourself. So what grade is it that you teach at your school? What is your role at the school? And what region of Washington are you from? We'll give you just a minute to complete that. All right, looks like most have completed the poll. We've got a few that are just finishing up here. All right, looks like a lot from elementary. We'll end the poll here in a minute and look at the results, but I'm seeing early results in the poll. Lots of elementary school classroom teachers from Southwest Washington. All right. Let's see. All right. See the results there? All right, so 81% from elementary schools, 76% are classroom teacher, and most from Southwest Washington, Clark, Cowlitz, Skamania, or Wahkiakum counties. All right, so I think we're going to get started. I'd like to introduce today's speaker to you. Again, it's Ian Thompson. And he's from the Lower Columbia School Gardens, which is based up in Longview. And he serves as the operations coordinator and founder. So I'll turn it over to you, Ian.
So, remember how to share my screen. Good afternoon. I'm just really thrilled to be here. And I don't think we had an idea of how many people might sign up for this, but this is just really encouraging. And the homework poll, that survey that people took, kind of telling your situation about either the challenges you have or how you're currently using an outdoor space, or kind of your ideas for how you'd like to, is all just it's really inspiring. I think we're all here, so we all have that understanding that this is really good for kids. It's really important. It's not built into the traditional school day, and we're trying to make it happen anyway because kids need it, and it's good for them. So just a little bit about our organization. So we're in Longview and Kelso, and we've been around about a dozen years or so. And we started out at one little school and helped some other schools build, and now we're in all the elementary middle schools in Longview and Kelso. And so we sort of coordinate community support. We coordinate like volunteers and donations and that sort of thing to sort of help build the gardens, maintain the gardens, channel volunteer energy, and do some programs with kids. So I know that the landscape is not the same everywhere, and that some communities have something similar, and some communities don't have really anything like it. So I know that we're dealing with that. And even though we've got a staff of about 6 right now that's doing programs with kids, we still, and that's great, right? We still are seeing kids like once or twice a year. And so classroom teachers, we even, with what we do every day, we realize that classroom teachers are where it's at, kind of empowering and training, and just trying to support classroom teachers taking their kids outside, because they've got the relationship with them, and they can, go outside and then go back to class and write about it and talk about it, and go out the next week and see what's changed and all that stuff that, a program like ours, which looks robust and is robust in some ways, just can't do that. So we say it all the time that teachers are our heroes. We tend to work with smaller groups of kids because we can, and we just really admire what you folks do. So we're hoping that this will be helpful for you. And you're not all in the same spot, so a lot of the information won't necessarily address everybody, directly. And so please use the chat to put whatever questions in there. We have a couple people from our team that are in there, as well as the Jane and Michelle, and then we'll answer questions at the end. But kind of please discuss. And I will also say that you came here to learn, maybe, but we are learning from you, because we really need to sort of know what kind of supports teachers need, and learn how to better support teachers. So thank you for your time. So we want you to know that you are doing a good thing, and that it's worth doing. And this is a elementary school in our district, and kind of a not very affluent neighborhood. And for a lot of kids, this is it. This is about the extent of sort of connecting with nature that they have. If they're don't have a yard at home where they live, and school is often blacktop and wood chips, and but kids, as you get out there with them, you realize that they just really, they are primed, they're geared, they're wired, they're designed to really want to dig in the dirt and explore. And we all want engaged learners. Kids, the lights are on, they're asking questions, they're excited about learning, and that just naturally happens when they're outside digging in the dirt. So that is that's a big deal. And you know, we're here, you know, as we're all sort of learning maybe more and more these days, you know, we're trying to help kids learn and be successful academically and in the world. And we're also learning that if kids are not okay, then you're not going to get there and it doesn't matter anyway. And so really a lot of what can happen with a connection with nature is that kids can find ways to feel better. And just, you know, it doesn't have to be the deep wilderness, you know, just connecting with the world. And also, you know, big thing that's happening out there is just a relationship with food. You know, kids learning where food comes from, and that they have a part in that. And as they sort of are able to, you know, harvest something and put it right in their mouth, they have a different relationship with it. And something else, we'll talk about this quite a bit today, actually, that seems to help with kind of the mindset of going outside is really like, you know, shifting away from, it's not recess. It's not like run and jump and slide down things and, you know, a birthday party. It's fun, but it's not that kind of fun. And also it's not just what can I get? What can I pick? What can I, you know, that sort of thing. But what can I give? How can I, you know, so as the discussion, as we're getting ready to go out to the garden is, you know, this world gives us all this stuff, all this beauty and all this, this beautiful food that just somehow magically grows on plants. It just comes out of the earth for us to eat. And like, what can we do to give back, you know, and learning that word reciprocity, a relationship as opposed to just sort of taking resources. So when we are working with kids, you know, we're not starting out in the classroom, we're starting out in the garden, but we're big on circles. And you know, part of what's happening in the garden is that we're all going to see stuff that we're all going to have questions, including the teachers and the adults. And that's a big part of it, is that we are all sort of learning about this wondrous world out there. And so sort of gathering in a circle kind of puts us all in an equal spot. And we have these 4 agreements that we'll go through together here in a second. But we'll just do it right now. So if we were starting out in the classroom, we would go over these with the kids, and then maybe if we're getting kind of squirrely on the way out to the garden, we might stop and circle up again and say, let's remember our garden agreements, let's say them together. And I will say that this sort of, the way we kind of go through them is sort of middle school. It's sort of elementary school. And once we get to middle school, sometimes kids are a little too cool for the sing-song stuff. And so it's still the same basic ideas, but we might phrase it differently, frame it differently for middle schoolers. So I think this is the part, and we don't actually know how this is going to go, but if people could unmute, I'm going to stand up and hopefully you can still see and hear me, and you can just do whatever you need to do on your end. But if we were with kids, we'd be gathering, we would go through these motions and go through the garden agreements together. We used to call them the garden rules. So people could unmute, and we'll see if it works.
Can't see him.
So welcome. So we have some rules, some agreements about how we're gonna be when we're out in the garden. And that's so that we can stay safe and so that we can have fun. And then so we can learn and so we can be respectful of what's out there. So we're gonna do a motion, okay? So we'll do the motion together and then we'll say the rules. I'll say it, then you say it. Ready? So we'll just make like a walking motion. And we say, walk in the garden.
Walk
in the garden.
And put our hand up. Wait to be invited.
Wait
To be
invited.
invited.
listen with respect,
Listen
Listen
with
with respect
and take a deep breath.
and take
Deep
a
breath.
deep breath.
Okay, ready? Let's do that together. Okay, let's do them one more time together now that you're experts, okay? Walk
Walk in the garden.
Wait
Wait to
to
be
be
invited.
invited.
Listen with
Listen with
respect and
and
take
take
a
a deep
breath.
breath. Okay, well, that I think that sort of worked. Some of the lag on the audio was a little not like it is out there with the kids. But we have, we learn these rules, and we actually modified them a little bit from a group called Seattle Tilth a lot of years ago. And we added take a deep breath just in the last couple of years because we wanted to sort of do something about just kind of something calming. And so, you don't have to do them like this, but I will say that, for us, like working across multiple schools and, like this last year, we're doing a summer school program and there's kids from like 6 different schools at this elementary school. And we, take kids out to the garden and we say, oh, does anybody know the garden agreements? And we start and all the kids know walk in the garden. And a lot of kids in our community move a lot. Like we'll see kids, 4 different schools in their elementary career. And it's kind of this, this thing that's comforting that they know. So that's been helpful, but feel free to change them, to fit. And so we would ask the kids, so that we're not just telling them what to do. We are kind of getting their input and their buy-in. So kids, like, why do you think we should walk in the garden? Why do you think that's the right way to move in the garden? And we might hear, so we don't trip on something, because we can get hurt, because there's going to be tools out there. And so someone could get hurt on a tool. We might accidentally step on a plant and break a plant, and that would be sad, or on hurt a creature. And those are really good reasons. And another reason is so that we don't miss anything. Because if we're running around like we do on recess, do you think we would notice like a little worm or a little bee doing something? So and you'll notice that all of these, none of them start with the word don't or no. And so it's, you'll be reminding kids a lot because they're excited, which is good. And they're going to want to, maybe run from here to there. And so instead of like, don't run, no running, don't run, you'll just hear yourself and even the kids will start to say to each other, walk in the garden, don't forget to walk in the garden. And also reinforcing that positive behavior. Anytime somebody's walking around, you can always just say, good job walking in the garden. And so it's all positive. And wait to be invited, again, is not don't. It's not don't touch that and don't touch that and don't touch that thing. You students are going to be invited to do a lot of really neat stuff today in the garden. But we just want you to wait to be invited. Why do you think you should wait to be invited to like pick something? You might pick some, a bunch of apples off a tree and learn that they actually weren't ripe. And now they're going to be wasted. We can't eat them this year. Or you might eat something that's not good for you, that might make you sick. Or if you like used a tool without being invited to use that tool, without knowing how to use it, then you might, you might not be able to use it safely and someone might get injured, that sort of thing. And so, and you can sort of have kids, as opposed to saying you are not doing the right thing, you can just say, were you invited to do that? I notice you're picking that plant. Have you been invited to do that? And they can self-correct and say, no, I haven't been. And then you can remind them, well, you are invited to, do these things. And as kids sort of know after you go out, and I do recognize that we're not all talking about, not everybody has a school garden with, food plants in it. You might have, some native plants, trees, that sort of thing. But, there's things that kids, as they start to know things, you don't have to wait to be invited every time. You know that you can always go eat. You can always go taste the chives. You know what they look like. You're not going to eat too many of them. We're not going to hurt the plant. You guys can just go for that. You know where the gloves are, and you know how to get them for yourself. You can go. You don't have to wait to be invited to get the gloves. You don't have to be, if there's enough ripe berries for everybody to have one, then you know that you can pick one. You don't have to be invited. And then we listen with respect. And, usually that is, listen to your teacher, which is important. But we're also asking kids to listen to each other, because we all have experiences that we're going to share with each other. We all have knowledge and wisdom and experiences to share. And we're also going to listen to the plants and, the creatures out there. And, but can we hear plants talking? Do they have mouths and voices? Maybe not, but if you were going to pick like a leaf off of an herb plant, do you think that if you really paid attention, do you think you could tell the plant saying, you're going to break my branch off, or you're going to pull me out by my roots? Or if you step on a tender little lettuce plant, you can sort of, if you're listening, you can sort of understand that's not what that plant wants, right? Or worms. We need to think about worms. They can, one thing we remind kids of often is that worms get sunburned. And so we need to be considerate of what the worms, we love holding them and looking at them. But we need to be considerate about, what they need and what they're looking for. And take a deep breath. And sometimes we will take a deep breath several times. And sometimes as the energy starts to build, as we're doing stuff in the garden, we can kind of, hey, let's gather together, or just wherever you're standing, let's take a deep breath. Ready? And maybe let's take 3 of them. And, letting kids know that that's a way that you can tell taking a deep breath tells your body that you're safe and you're okay. And so that's a way that if you're not feeling calm, that's a way you can help yourself feel calm, just by taking a deep breath. Seems really simple, but it works. And also, if you find something that really startles you, like maybe, a bug or something you're not used to seeing, you could just, you don't have to yell or scream. You can just take a step back and take a deep breath, and then just kind of move forward as you're comfortable. And a lot of being out there is just sort of empathy and seeing these creatures and these plants as beings that have value and have wisdom, and are not just like, oh, that looks weird, I think we should smash that, but really sort of let's learn about that. Do you know what worms, worms look so different from us. Can you imagine being a worm? They don't have a face, really. They don't have arms or legs. They don't have bones. And it just seems like such a different way to live, being a worm. But worms are great, and they can really help us out. And they, what they do, they eat all the stuff that's decomposing. They help decompose it, and they make soil. And if worms don't look very cool, you could try the worm challenge. So that is where you can lay on your face on the ground. And usually kids do not actually do the challenge, but we're just sort of imagining the challenge. So that would be, you lay on the ground and you have 5 minutes to get your entire body under the surface of the ground. You can't use your arms or legs. And who's going to win? You or the worm. And so, stuff like that might give kids, oh yeah, they're very good at that. So a lot of it, like I said, a lot of what we're trying to do is frame the experience. You know, yes, we're going to go learn. And also just really like taking a step back from we're at school and we're doing school stuff, and you know, you're at school because you have to be, and it's what kids do. It's not a bad place to be. But you know, this is a thing, you know, this sort of relating with plants is something that people have always done. And so when we go outside and we learn about plants and we smell them and we learn what their leaves look like and we learn which ones you can eat and which ones you shouldn't eat, and which ones are good for medicine, that sort of thing, we're doing something that people have always done. And so if that feels, if you get a good feeling when that's happening, or if you have a kind of a special feeling, that's natural because that's what people do. And everybody here, so all of you students, you all have ancestors. Okay, that's like your grandparents, wave like great, however many greats, grandparents, all of us come from family that lived in relationship with plants, where they spent most of their time, a lot of their time, learning the plants, interacting with the plants, helping the plants helping the people helping the plants. And so that's what we're doing today. You know, you're in school, but we're doing a very human thing. So that, and then, you know, learning these things like gratitude and reciprocity, you know, actually saying thank you to plants, not just like, I want that, you know, kind of pushing your friends aside so you can get more strawberries, but being respectful, asking the plant, you know, thanking the plant. And yeah. And then, oh, sorry. I got a little click happy. There's also the thing about food, and we're not really, you know, as we're tasting, we really want it to be kind of challenged by choice. But what can happen is that kids will taste, if they pick it themselves, they're going to be more likely to eat it and to like it than if it was put on their plate. And this is just a true thing. And, you know, but it doesn't always have to be, you know, do you like this, or do you like it better than candy, or do you like it better than pizza? But it's like, what does it taste like? We're kind of being scientists and we're just noticing, you know. And so maybe you could taste it, or if you're not comfortable tasting it, can you kind of smash it up and smell it? If you don't want to do that, can you hold it? And just sort of being comfortable with things that we don't necessarily love the taste of and want to eat a lot of it, but we're okay to taste it because it's kind of an adventure. And we're learning about plants. What do they taste like? Which ones are okay? And noticing, like, I don't care for this, but some people love this. Now I'm learning about other people. And a lot of you have probably heard about don't yuck my yum. And we use that in the garden a lot. You know, really, you know, somebody will say that's disgusting. And, you know, that is sort of saying that these people are eating something that's disgusting, you know, and that's like, who would eat something that's disgusting? That's not what we're doing. So it's more like, I don't care for that. You know, it's not my favorite. You seem to really like it, and kind of being curious about that. And, you know, as we're going out to the garden, we can just notice, we're just going to notice things, and kids are very good at noticing. And it can be a little bit of a lost art, with sort of, you know, the speeding up of images on screens and stuff, to where it's got to kind of be a big impact to notice things big and loud. But kids are really good at noticing things. And so if you kind of set it up to, that's what we're doing, we're going to notice. So we're not just like walking, it's not boring. You're noticing things. And when we get into the garden and we circle up, or when we get back to class, you can share what you noticed, or you can write about what you noticed, that sort of thing. And Also, and we had this fabulous teacher, Janelle Bittner, who started one of the gardens early on. She went to half-time as a first grade teacher to help start the garden program at her school. And she was big into these just asking a good question. And it did not matter that, you know, the teacher didn't know the answer or whatever, and she would do this thing called a wonder wall. And that was the activity. Go around, you know, investigate, and what questions do you want to ask? And we're going to, you know, write these questions on this board. And whether they all got answered or not was not really the point. We'd work on some of them, and some of them, you know, like, what do stars taste like? Or, you know, there are some that we're not going to be able to arrive at the answer, or it can help us refine. Maybe we could ask that question a different way. But just asking good questions. And that's something, because what we want to happen is that when students go outside, they all feel like they can be successful. And a lot of times what's happening in the classroom, you know, it's very sort of cut and dry. Like, you are not successful. You're not being successful at these math problems. Like, you're trying to do the math problems, the answer you've gotten is incorrect. And I know that a lot of you teachers are not, you know, talking that way to kids. But just that, you know, we're setting them up to where they're doing stuff where they can all be successful. You know, can you notice things? Can you ask a good question? That sort of thing. So we've kind of framed the experience, and we have our garden agreements, and it looks like these kids are pulling weeds, and I don't know if it was a contest or not, but like, see if you can fill this bucket with weeds. But kind of what can we do when we go outside? And this planting tiny carrot seeds with 20 tiny kindergartners is a very hard thing to do. And when we first started helping this North Lake Elementary that had the first garden in Longview, like 20 years ago, we saw this teacher who, it turned out, had superpowers, and she just did it like it was, this is what you do. It's easy. You just take the 20 kindergartners and you hand them tiny carrot seeds, and it works fine. So we're like, hey, you know, the rest of the teachers in the building, why don't you come out and also claim the raised bed, and why don't you come do this? And we learned that this is, in real life, this is kind of about the hardest thing you can do. And but a lot of times as people come out to the garden, that's kind of what they're thinking. We're going to do gardening. And you know, hopefully we can get to some gardening, but that definitely doesn't need to be, that's definitely not the starting place. And it doesn't need to be where we get every time. And if you have, I mean, that's kind of a lot of raised beds right there, but a lot of gardens are smaller. And, you know, if all 400 kids come out and plant, you know, and plant something, that's awesome. But also, you know, there's no more planting, there's no more room to plant things. Or even if half the school, you know, might plant the whole thing. So it's hard. We got to be doing other stuff out there. And, you know, just the easiest thing is just a walk, just a tour. And one of the things, I can't speak for everyone else's campuses, you know, this is just sort of our, how we think about it. And if somebody could, Jane, I think, is doing this right now. This resource right here, it's a 2-page front and back, or it's 2 pages, and it kind of talks about what we can do out there. And just this idea that, you know, one of the things it says on there is that if the kids are following the 4 agreements, if they're walking, if they're waiting to be invited, if they're being respectful, if they're being calm, they can do, it's okay if they do stuff. And again, on your campuses, you need to sort of, you know, somebody else may have different rules, but, you know, our thing is that they can touch stuff. They can, you know, if there's a lot of leaves, they can pull a leaf off. They can dig stuff up and look at the roots. And a lot of times, you know, we will see teachers that are telling kids like, just don't touch anything. I don't know what this stuff is. I don't know who's been taking care of this garden, but don't break anything. And just like, don't touch anything. And these gardens really are not to be a perfect show garden. They really are for kids, and kids, sometimes break things. And that's a learning experience, for kids. So really, it's just a senses tour. We're going to smell, we're going to look, we're going to feel textures. If we have some stuff we can taste, we're going to taste it. We're going to listen while we're out there. And, if you feel like your class is gonna come off the rails after not very long, then it can, or if they stop moving, then you can just do a loop through and go back and kind of debrief what you did. And maybe next time we can stop, and do a little bit more digging into stuff. But, ideally kids are in charge of can sort of, master their own behavior basically, and be able to, they know what to do. And another thing we do is we've been doing a lot the last couple of years is just a scavenger hunt. And I would appreciate any ideas for naming it something else, because it sounds like sort of looking for rotten flesh. But as opposed to sort of a scripted lesson, there's just sort of these questions and things for kids to look for, and kids feel like they're free, but they're in the bounds of the garden. And I know some gardens don't have bounds, but they're being respectful, and they really are they're on their own educational exploring path. They're doing the learning, they're guiding the pace, they're stopping and looking at what's interesting to them. So I will say a couple things about this first resource, a resource for educators. It's got those 4 garden agreements on it, and then starting with just a sensory walk or whatever. Scavenger hunt, it's got some other stuff we can do out there, and how to sort of think about harvesting. Should we pick that? And that is the thing where, well, if there's 3 apples on the tree, we probably better not pick all 3 of them. And that one student probably doesn't get to pick one and eat it all for themselves, but we could pick one, we could take it back to the class, and we could cut it up so that everyone could get to taste it. But something like chives or snap peas or edible flowers or something where there's something for everybody. Those are different. Same thing with flowers. Just going out on your walk, we could add, let's get a bouquet for the secretary, or for the principal, or for somebody that's having a hard time. And so we'll take some scissors out there, and every student can cut one thing. And if there's 20 flowers, maybe don't cut all 20 flowers with your class, but we could get a few from there, and we could also get some green sprigs of something else. That sort of thing. So some of that language and how to gauge that stuff is on that document. And then the other one is just about on scavenger hunts, and it has sort of a list of a sort of a pick list of stuff to choose from. And Jane will share this as well. And then it also links to 3 examples of some other ones, including one for like really young kids that maybe aren't reading, with some drawings on it that they can find. So yeah, so hopefully you'll get, I can't see the chat, but hopefully you're seeing that. And but when we do the scavenger hunt, we typically break it into like 3 sections. And so that's find and taste and do. And so, you can think of a million things you could find, but we might look for signs of the season. What season is it? Living creatures is always a good idea to try to find living creatures. And, if you don't have tools, kids can take a stick or something they find to maybe dig around a little bit and see if they can find any creatures. We can also look for a sign that a living creature has been here. You know, how could we tell if a creature's been here? Maybe a leaf has been nibbled on, or, you know, somebody pooped over there. We've seen teachers do, you know, this lesson on organic and inorganic and decomposers. So, you know, things that, something that's alive, something that used to be alive but is not now, you know, something that's decomposing, something that's you know, that's inorganic, that has not ever been alive. So with the stuff we're finding and then tasting, again, that is, you know, some kids may really want to chow down all the stuff and some kids may not, but it's still sort of this experience, and it's also learning what the plant is, learning the name, so that the next time they come out, they can know and they can talk to their friends about it. And, you know, just if you're able to go out multiple times, I mean, that is ideal, you know, in a season or in a school year, because you can see, you know, the differences. You can just, we're going to go observe what we see, and then we're going to come back, you know, in some amount of time, and what are we going to notice that's different? So we're finding stuff, we're tasting things, and then we're doing something. And that, you know, part of that is back to that, you know, the garden has helped us so much. It's so beautiful. I feel calm when I'm out here. I got to, you know, gave us this food to try. I got to taste these things. And, you know, shade, it's like really hot today, and we got to stand under this tree. So thankful for the trees. What could we do to help the garden? What's something that we could do? We could take, if you have compost, we could go get like a little bit of compost and go put it by a plant, maybe a plant that's looking sad. We could just go say thank you to a plant. We could pull a couple weeds, and, you know, weeding, actually it can be surprising how kids can get into this, especially if it's not just forever. Like, let's pull weeds for, I'm gonna set a timer. We're gonna pull weeds for 3 minutes, or we're gonna pull, everyone's gonna pull 10 weeds, see if you can do that. Or, you know, who can get the longest root, and a lot of times that is a good motivator for that. And yeah, so they're doing something out there, and possibly planting. And even if you don't have a raised bed, you know, if you have like flower seeds or you know, pea seeds are something you can put just about anywhere. We'll plant them like at the base of, you know, a young fruit tree, and some of the peas will manage to kind of climb up, you know, because peas need that support. Or next to a fence, or we could make like a little trellis with sticks, just like lean a couple sticks up against something, or make a tripod and just stick some peas in the ground. And then when you come out, you know, in a week or two, you can see which one, if they're growing. You can also dig them up and see it, you know, see if they're sprouting, that kind of thing. But just, you know, I guess, you know, even if like you're not sure about those raised beds, if they're taken, or if it's okay to plant stuff in there, that just sticking seeds somewhere, you know, maybe even if you're not authorized by the district, just in the regular landscaping beds, you know, just to do it, just to plant some seeds. And if you have little starts, that's, you know, that's a wonderful thing for kids to do. And a lot of times we'll have a tray of, you know, baby starts in the, you know, tiny little cell trays, and we'll be planting more than the garden is really asking for. You know, it's not really about the perfect garden or whatever, and we're just sort of planting lettuce, again, you know, under a bush, or, which might be a nice place for it. But the idea is that kids are getting that experience. You know, even if that raised bed is full and there's not room for any more plants, we're either going to put it, you know, plant it extra full, or we're gonna, you know, just go find another place to tuck it in. Plant, you know, who would like a little kale plant for a friend, and we're just going to go plant a kale plant by some other plant, just so kids can have that experience. And you know, estimating, you know, if you have a scale, you know, how much do you think that is going to weigh? How much do you think that is going to weigh? And putting it on scale and measuring. And, you know, ideally, gardens are places where, you know, people can go out and just use it as an additional space, you know, eating lunch or doing a writing assignment or doing something. You know, we see kids out in some of the gardens with their musical instruments, you know, music class, it's a sunny day, let's go out to the garden and, you know, play a song for the trees, that kind of thing. So not even garden related, just using it. And I know that not everybody has seating, and, you know, which is a great thing if, you know, it really helps. It helps make it a destination for teachers to say, hey, let's go out there if there's a place to sit. But you can do sit spots. So kids could have, I mean, fancy would be a little square of carpet, but it could be like a little piece of cardboard, just something to sit on. And this is your little sit spot. And we go into the garden and, you know, you can just kind of find either we're going to circle up or you can go find a place where you're going to write or study or explore or whatever. And you can take your little sit spot. And that is a helpful thing. This is a middle school that is lucky to have, you know, almost enough seating for a class. And here are kids on that scavenger hunt. And so, as it says on that sheet, there's a couple different ways to do that. One is every kid has their own clipboard, and we've gotten some of those little half-size clipboards for a half sheet of paper that work really well for that. Every kid has their own clipboard, and what's nice about that is that one of the do part can be drawing something. So go and find your favorite plant and draw, you know, make a drawing of that. But what these kids are doing is we're getting into groups, and we just have one clipboard for the group, and they go out as a little task force and find all the things and taste all the things on the scavenger hunt. And they might stop along the way at the compost, and you know, digging in compost with metal tools can kind of be tough on the creatures. And so a probe, you know, we use a science word, probe. They can have a stick to kind of explore around in there. And just getting some sturdy hand lenses, which are pretty inexpensive, has been a really great thing to have. And, you know, kids are good at sharing. You don't necessarily need one for every student, but that really helps. Yeah, kids are just really interested in looking at stuff up close. And there doesn't really need to be a lot of extra sort of curriculum attached to that necessarily, because kids will, again, be noticing. You got incredible eyes, you know, be noticing stuff that's going on there and generating good questions. And again, the tasting. So a lot of, you know, flowers are pretty cool because, you know, students, a lot of times when you go to the store, you're not really seeing flowers except for a head of broccoli or cauliflower, right? And so kids think they're pretty cool if they're eating flowers. And so a lot of, you know, a lot of like broccoli and kale and cabbage, you know, that family, the brassica family, those, you know, let those go to seed, let those go to flower. And that's often, you know, throughout the year, you'll have something to eat on there, the leaves or the flowers. And kids really, you know, they notice. They don't taste like Skittles or anything, but they can detect that hint of sweetness. And as they learn it, you know, they'll come back to that, and they're learning a lot through that experience. We're using a table in this instance, but a garden taco is another great sort of activity tasting thing that people can do. You just get a lettuce leaf, if you don't have the table and the ingredients set up, you can just take your lettuce leaf, your little taco shell, and walk around the garden. And, I found some little pink chive flowers. I can put like a fava bean leaf. I put a snap pea in here. I can put a little carrot in here. I put a little piece of kale in there. And anyway, kids, I think it's pretty cool and really seem to like them. And I feel like that might be rhubarb on there, on the table. And just a little bundle of herbs. So herbs, one thing we know about herbs is that they're so generous, and it's not like us, right? If we were to, come up and pluck off a couple of your fingers for a bouquet, like that would not be okay. But these plants are different, and they're actually happy to share with you. So when you're picking flowers and you're picking leaves, if you're picking, not too much, if you're giving it enough to, leaving enough to keep going, then they're happy to share with you. So we can go around as we learn the herbs, and we can cut different herbs and just tie it with a piece of twine, either in the garden or back in class. You can, do a little tag, just punch a hole in some cardstock. And that's something that, if they hang it upside down, that can stay good, for years in their room or, wherever they live, or be something they would give to somebody. So that is like just a cool activity that's special. And a lot of times we'll do this sort of like as it's the end of the year, it's the end of the season, or it's the end of the school year, and we're going to do this thing to kind of remember our year in the garden and remember the smells and the experience of being in the garden. And just looking for seeds, just gathering, as all these flowers and plants produce these seed heads, just exploring what their seeds look like, opening seed heads, collecting them. We've had classes take like little coin envelopes and, save seeds and actually put them in the little envelopes and decorate the envelopes and like do a little sale, that sort of thing. But just learning about seeds. And this is one, you could do it at any time of the year, but September in a garden is a great time to do this. And it's just sort of learning the parts of the plant. And, we're kind of surprised at every grade level that kids, they really haven't like internalized the parts of the plant. And also, as we're circling up, we're like, okay, here's the, 6 basic parts of the plant: the roots, the stems, the leaves, the seeds, the flowers, and the fruits. People eat a lot of fruits, about that, right? And we know but do you guys eat roots very much? And the kids are like, no, I'm not going to eat a plant's roots. Are you kidding me? And we're like, well, what about carrots? What about radishes? What about potatoes? That kind of thing. And then do you eat flowers? Oh no, don't eat flowers. Well, broccoli is the flower of a plant. And seeds, did you know corn is a seed? And just sort of that shift in thinking, and that connection, like they've learned it in class, they can do a worksheet in class, but when they come out and they actually sort of touch and harvest and taste parts of the plant, it's been a pretty meaningful lesson. So on this day, kids we circle up, we talk about it, and then we get into groups. And one group, we've got 3 groups. One group is getting roots and stems. One group is getting leaves and seeds. One's getting flowers and fruits. And then they come back to the table and we kind of share stuff. We talk about what we found, and then we taste some of that stuff, taste all the parts of the plant. And I was just a bit about labeling. We talked about earlier about planting seeds. And, I don't know, we hear a lot of sort of uncertainty about, I don't know where it's okay to plant. I don't know what's been planted. I don't know whose plans, people have plans for this bed or whatever. And, communicating with other people in the building is important, but also important is just labeling. So if if your class plants a little something, just sort of mark that and label it. And then when the next person comes along, they know that, even though they can't see them, that there's seeds planted there. And that's kind of how that goes. And so window blinds, don't get the metal ones because they're super sharp, but just vinyl plastic window blinds are great plant labels, and we mark them with pencil. So Sharpie, as you may know, Sharpie will let you down. Permanent does not mean permanent, but pencil on these tags works great. And now we're doing a writing exercise, right? Now we're doing language arts. I don't know if you've noticed this about bean leaves, but they have some sort of a Velcro arrangement on them. And so a bean leaf will stick to your clothing. And so a lot of times we will get our garden badge when we go to the garden. And that's been a sweet thing. And so if you were doing a scavenger hunt and you knew what was out there, you're going to look for something dead, something alive, some creatures or whatever. But if you know of something, if there's a bird's nest, or there's some special something, then you would put that on that for people to find. And then, like we were talking about, and I will just say, I'm having some fun talking. But I haven't really had this experience of just sort of talking to the screen. And so I hope people are doing all right out there. I can't see you. Anyways, just thank you for your patience. I also can't see the chat. So hopefully that is going well, and there's some questions being generated, and it feels like a little bit more of a conversation on your end.
Yeah, there's lots of great information in the chat, Ian. I can take you off spotlight so you can see everything.
No, just hearing somebody else's voice was such a relief. I can't even tell you.
This is Jane, everybody. It's going great, Ian.
I will just I have a few more, and then we can kind of hear some questions. And then I couldn't help myself. There's like a bunch of stuff tacked onto the bottom if we really ran out of time or wanted to talk about some other stuff, we could. But and I do want to say that I'm putting a lot of faith, which is well-founded faith, in Mark Watrin, who's just incredible. He's worked with a lot of the districts. He's worked on his own with his own classes, and also teaching teachers how to do science. And how to connect science. And I had not even met him. And in one of our gardens, I went by and there was like a bunch of teachers were standing in one of our gardens. I was like, what's going on? And he was doing a training, I think on the FOSS kits, the science kits, and for second grade teachers in Kelso. And he's like, here's how you connect, what's in the FOSS kit to what's actually growing in the garden at your school. And anyways, he's really good at that stuff. And so anyways, I'm just thankful that we have him on the third trip to kind of complement what we're talking about here today, and also Becca from Master Gardeners to talk a lot more about actual gardening stuff, like actual growing stuff. So anyways, like I said, one of the key things is because I mean, we're just ravaging our beautiful earth. And as to just trying not to have these gardens be a microcosm of that, I think is a really important goal. For kids to kind of walk that out, that we don't just like, I want that, I'm taking that, I'm more for me, and that we really are trying to, emphasize gratitude, respect, and talking about, and I'm not an expert, so you want to sort of like look into your you know, curriculum about indigenous people of the place where you are. You know, there's the Since Time Immemorial stuff, and then we'll share soon a really cool program called Tend, Gather, Grow. But just, you know, some ideas from those cultures is just this idea of plants being relatives, you know, and, you know, not, you wouldn't say it, you wouldn't point at your grandma over there and say, you know, it looks hungry. You know, I wonder if it wants some soup, like, and that's how it would feel to talk to plants that way. So just thinking about, you know, that sort of thing. So anyway, so helping our garden, and we just feel like it's an important thing to do every time. So we can pull some weeds, that's helpful. We can do some watering, and kids love to water. And I just want to say that, you know, if there's a hose out and you don't have an adult to monitor the hose, you know, filling watering cans, it's probably not gonna go well, you know, because if somebody's not holding it steady and all of a sudden the sprayer hits the watering can and all of a sudden, you know, the water sprays and everybody around gets wet and then everybody screams, and then the hose drops and then spraying all over, and it's just a really challenging thing. And so, you know, in the few places where we have a rain barrel, it's a totally different deal because it's not a forceful spray of water. They can't, you know, it can't go wrong. So they just like flip the little thing, get some water, and they can water. And we don't ask the question, when's the last time somebody watered this, or, you know, what's the schedule very much. We just, well, let's check your finger, your moisture meter. Isn't it amazing? You can tell how wet things are just by feeling with your skin. And so that's what we do. We just go put our finger in the soil. If we go down like an inch and it feels dry, then that plant would like some water. And that plant drinks. Where's the plant drink from? Does it drink from it? It's so fun to get the plant all wet. It looks so happy, right? But that's not actually how the plant drinks, right? We want to give it water so it really soaks into the soil. Anyway, so watering, you know, can be a helpful thing that kids can do. And so if there's a rain barrel to get at, that's helpful. This other thing that we call rain clouds is where you have a couple buckets full of water, and then you do like yogurt containers with a couple holes drilled in the bottom. So kids can walk over the bucket, you know, fill it up, and now it's raining. And now they're just going to kind of go and rain on top of the garden beds. And yeah, this is just a really handy thing to do. And so if you're able to get out there ahead of time and fill some buckets, you know, in the areas where it needs to get watered, this is something, what's great about this is that kids can do it themselves. And we're trying to increase the number of things that kids can do without an adult hovering, you know. But that just feels like a really direct way to help the garden. You know, this plant was thirsty and I helped, you know, we helped the garden, and kids feel really good about that. And mulching is another one. You know, we're lucky to have a relationship with the city parks department where we get leaves from the parks. Don't get street leaves, they're gross and have road grime. And then wood chips from the urban forestry department. So all of our gardens, you know, for the most part, it's wood chips on the path. And then when we put the beds to bed, we insulate them. We put down a little compost, hopefully, but then we put a thick blanket of leaves over the garden, over the beds. And that, you know, I mean, you're kind of tucking them in. It's kind of a cozy thing to do. So kids feel good about that. But it's, you know, it's providing nutrients. All the nutrients that tree took up through its roots, you know, from the ground or in those leaves, and it's dropping it back down. The worms are gonna, you know, help pull those nutrients into the soil, and it's gonna keep the soil from getting compacted, which is a big deal. Bare soil any time of year is bad news, and is not good for the soil, and it's gonna make it really hard for you to pull weeds out of compacted dirt. And then the thick layer of mulch just keeps weeds from growing up also. So a lot of times we're able to show up, months later, pull the leaves aside or part the leaves to dig a hole, and we're in business. So, but this is a thing, kids aren't using shovels, so they don't have to be, they're not going to injure each other, and they can just grab some leaves and go put it on the beds and sort of help take care of their garden.
Hey, Ian, we've got about 20 minutes left. So we're ready for questions whenever you are.
Okay, well, this says the end on it, so that means I have to stop talking. Should I do something different with my screen now? Should I stop sharing, or what do I do?
If you want to, and I'll end your spotlight so that you can see everybody here.
Cool.
So Ian, thank you so much for your time today. Really amazing information. Lots of great information happening in the chat as well. So and Ian, if you want to put your contact information in the chat for folks, if they want to reach out to you directly, especially if you're from the Longview or Kelso School District.
Hillary, you so much. Would you just put info at stuff in there? If you go to our general sort of inbox, that sort of reaches our team, and so yeah, and we have a number you can text and call now.
Awesome.
So
Thank you.
What's been happening out there while I was yammering away?
Talking about strawberries, and where are the seeds for the strawberries?
I know. They're on the outside. We say that. I think there's a really cool book called what's it called? Fruit is a suitcase for seeds, something like that. But not with strawberries. They're stuck to the outside of the fruit.
We actually discovered that that's not true, Ian. So that's what
I have to leave this meeting right now. What? Why are you saying that? Why would you do that?
Well,
Let Amy
it's
talk
true. It's true in that the little speckles on the outside of the strawberry are the fruit of the strawberry, and inside those little speckles are the seeds. The technical term is ACHENES. So that fleshy berry part that we eat, that we call the fruit or the strawberry, is a fleshy receptacle. It's like the swollen, I think it's like the swollen ovaries of the fruit. But
Amazing.
yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. So folks, I did put in the chat a link for today's attendance. So if you click on that Google form, it's a really quick name, email, and something that you learned today, so that we can check the box for your attendance. We have a master sheet that we're keeping. But we do have several minutes that if you have a question for Ian or his teammates who are here, Hillary, sorry, feel free to unmute yourself and let us know how you're doing in your garden if you have a question for Ian.
Ian, I think Jacob had a question about how old some of the gardens are, and how he was seeing some very big grapevines.
Yeah, so North Lake is the oldest, and that's 20 years old. And the rest of them, some of the other ones might be like 12 years old. But I remember, when I came to North Lake, after it had been going for like a number of years, somebody had planted grapes on the fence, and I didn't really know you could even grow grapes around here. I hadn't been paying attention, but it was September, the fruit was ripe, and there was enough literally for every student to get some fruit. And like very little, grapes don't need water, you just have to hack them back every year. They don't need fertilizer. And it was like, wow. And so we started putting grapes on fences in earnest after that. So yeah, some of those grapes might be 18 years old or something like that. But they go pretty quick, like a couple years, and they'll be producing fruit. And they'll go, don't plant them like you do in wine country. That's what we did. I remember like driving through wine country and like, oh, they're like 4 feet apart or something. So we planted table grapes 4 feet apart along the fence, and table grapes can do like 50 feet, just one vine easily. So we've had to remove some of those. But one table grape can do a lot. What else?
And Ian, for folks who want to visit the gardens in the Longview Kelso area, are they open to the public after hours?
Some of them might be on accident. But I think especially with some fencing security changes that the districts have made in the last couple of years, that's not really, probably not going to happen. But if you get a hold of us, we'd be happy to meet you at a garden. We can figure that out. Some of them do, function like that after hours. Some of them were like the district wants the community to be able to use the playground for the same thing, because the grapevine will get as big as your leg, and then you'll have to cut the fence out.
I had a quick question. You mentioned earlier there was a coordinator for the Longview Kelso Gardens. And I was wondering who that was again, if we could get information on them.
So that's our organization, and we have like 5 garden coordinators right now, I think. And so one coordinator would be, in charge of like 4 schools, something like that, and then there's some that are shared. But if you just email that info@email, we can connect you with that person. Does that answer it all right?
Yeah, that's okay. I was mostly wondering because I am in Kelso. I am a 2nd grade teacher, and you're talking about FOSS kits. I'm like, I don't have any kits, but I'm at Lexington Elementary, and they do team, and so I'm wondering if that's just the STEAM teachers that get those kits instead.
Interesting. Did Kelso do away with FOSS kits?
I
Does
don't know.
everybody know what, like, the black science kits? Do you all get those? I made an assumption.
Are you talking about the big black boxes?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I've seen those outside of the STEAM teachers' rooms, but the grade level teachers, we don't get them.
Okay. Well, I will say that I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings, but I think there's been some talk, there's been some responses to FOSS kits that they're not always like, that hands-on science outside would be a better way. Can we just do that instead of getting these kits? And sometimes it comes with a seed to start, and you start it, but it's the wrong time of year. You're doing beans in January or something. And so we don't really interact with the FOSS kits much. And I think Kelso has maybe tried to get away from. And I will say, Megan, that so we said we're in all of the schools, but Lexington is the one where it's flooding because there's a wetland back there and it's a new school. And so we are dealing with groundwater issues. And so you've seen it. It's just a big mass of mud out there. We're trying to get there, but we probably won't be able to do much until it dries out in the spring.
Hey, Ian, we have a couple questions in the chat of what does it take to start a new school garden at a school that doesn't have one and it has no fenced area, and about how long does it take to get it started?
Wow. Well, I mean, that's a big conversation, but basically, like in one sense, you could just throw a pile of soil on the ground and plant some seeds in your gardening. You're in business. For us, for Longview especially, I mean, yeah, for these schools, they've required a fence. The district has said we want to see a fence, and it can't be a volunteer made fence out of stuff you buy at Home Depot. It has to be a commercial grade chain link to match our, match the district stuff. So a lot of times we get slowed down by like, we want to start a garden, but first we have to pay for a fence, which is like, $6,000, lots of dollars. And so sometimes that can slow you down. So I guess it depends a little bit on that. But I will say that generally, if you're going on top of grass, that is just a sheet mulching enterprise. That is, storing up lots of big sheets of cardboard going through the pain of taking all the tape off of them and then laying cardboard on the grass and then putting, you know, wood chips, soil, compost, leaves on top of that to kill the grass. So that's the way that we normally do it. And then a lot of times those beds are not necessarily raised box beds. They're just sort of, you know, in the ground. So I don't know, I think a lot of that would be a good, like good for a follow-up conversation. Because it kind of depends on some of this, you know, some of what you're dealing with at your site and what you're looking for.
All right, thank you. We have time for other questions while I scan the chat. Anybody else want to unmute and ask Ian a question? Help yourself.
This is Hannah. Thank
Oh.
you, Ian. I work with school gardens with Ian and Hillary, and I think Aaron might be on here too. I just wanted to kind of echo something that Ian mentioned briefly, like something that also is just like such an importance of talking to students of all ages, you know, elementary or maybe start getting older into middle or even high school, is using the garden as like a space of acknowledging the land itself and the people, like Ian said, who have worked this for time immemorial. And so in the
Hannah, you accidentally muted yourself. But I think you're putting something in the chat.
Oh, thank you. So in the chat, I just sent a link. Maybe some of you know about it, but if you're just like, oh, I have no idea where to start, this is a really good resource of finding out in your area whose land like your school is on, to just start the learning process, and also just to kind of acknowledge and be real of the injustice that is in like our agricultural system in the United States, and kind of just like the oppression there, and you know, acknowledging this and all of like the really wonderful things that have come through with food justice specifically. So I just wanted to say that. Thank
Good word.
you.
Good word, Hannah. Thank you so much. I will say a couple things. One, Becca is going to be talking about actual gardening this next session, so that'll be a good place for a lot of these questions. But I will say that when we first started, we were just thinking, you know, food crops, and we were just thinking mostly vegetables, and then we really sort of shifted, and like perennials are pretty great. You know, a vegetable garden, if you turn your back, you know, for 6 months, you don't have anything. You just have a mess. I mean, it's plants, it's nature, but like a fruit tree, you know, or a grapevine or blueberry bushes or, you know, hardy, woody herbs, you know, lavender and rosemary and stuff like that. Like they don't need a lot of upkeep. I mean, well, fruit trees do, but, but it's just really, it really helps. And so a lot of times, you know, the vegetables aren't growing in the garden, but there's these perennials, you know, and it's sort of a little bit more like a forest in some cases, you know, a little natural habitat, and also more native plants, like really trying to focus on having some of those in there. Well, I really wish we could be in a room together. It's really cool that that people are interested in this kind of stuff. I mean, it's just it's so good for kids, and it's really you know, if it feels like it's not fair, it's not. You know, I feel like there's a lot of, you know, hey, school gardens are a great idea, and they are, but they're you know, they're a lot of work, and you can't just say, oh, we don't have funding for that this year, you know, like an art program or a basketball program or whatever. We'll just not do that, and then 3 years from now we'll pull the equipment back out and we'll offer that class again or whatever. Like the garden is alive, and you can't really take a break, and that's challenging, but it's still totally worth it and needs to happen. And so, you know, our hope is that there'll be sort of more support from, you know, and funding to be able to like see it for the value that it is and have that not be such, people not have to work so hard to make that happen, you know, and not have to be so darn creative about it. Because I mean, yeah, it's awesome that teachers are here because we know that teachers have a load. People are amazing.
Awesome. Thank you, Ann.
Mhm.
And if you have any questions about the upcoming classes, I did put those sessions in the chat. If you have any questions about your clock hours or the sessions, you can reach out to Stacy Meyer. Her information's in the PD Enroller that you signed up for this class. So reach out to Stacy at ESD 112.
Mhm.
I don't know if Stacy's still on the call, but we did have a question about watering over the summer, Ian. Did you want to touch on that for a second?
Yeah, I think because we have 7 whole minutes, I could just do this thing. I think there's like 10 more slides. I'll just sort of run through them, and a couple of them have to do with summer. And part of it is that, you know, like what are you able to do if you happen to have, you know, 3 adults instead of just 1 teacher? You know, if you had a couple helpers and you're able to go out into the garden and break up into 3 groups, and now you're working in smaller groups, and that's kind of, you know, for us, that's where some of the more gardening activities, you know, specific garden activities can happen. Which I understand not everybody has that, but I'm just going to do this real quick and hopefully it's a good choice. So can I share screen?
Yep, you can share screen while you're
Okay.
doing that. Ian, just a reminder to folks, I did put in the chat a link for the attendance for today. So if you can just take a second to fill that out really quick, we'll make sure that we have marked your attendance for today's session. We thank you for that.
Okay. So, a lot of times what we're doing here is that if we're able to break into groups, you know, have kids working in different areas of the garden, and not having those groups right next to each other, because when one group, you know, discovers a worm and starts yelling about it, the group that's right next to them is going to get very distracted. And, you know, this is a big group. This looks like 10 students, but just kind of spacing kids, you know, positioning on either side of a long bed, and that each kid is gonna, you know, plant half of the row, meeting somebody in the middle. You should grow scarlet runner beans. They're the coolest. They grow tall and they have beautiful red flowers that the hummingbirds like, and the beans look like dragon eggs. You know, a garden can be a place where you can, you know, do a lot of art out there, you know, on the fences or signs, or paint whatever structure is out there. Sometimes kids are able to contribute as the garden is being built, you know. I forget who was asking about a new garden, but, you know, try to get kids invested in that. These kids will have ownership, you know, as time goes on. We do some after-school garden clubs where we can do stuff, you know, like building projects. Oops, we did a cooking class. We figured out a good way to do pizza outside. So for what we try to do with our gardens is have like a day a week. So this is garden that Hannah's coordinating. And so 9 to 11 Wednesday, you know, anybody, the community is welcome to show up and, you know, help water, help weed, take home some strawberries, you know, pick some. And that's a good way to kind of, at least the garden's getting watered once a week. We also have, you know, try to have families sign up. And then also, you know, what's happening with the produce during the summer. You know, those families that visit are taking it, but you could also do like a little farm stand where, you know, like a food sharing thing. And so that school garden, especially if it's kind of like facing the street, becomes sort of a community, a place for the community to connect around food. think that is all. Oh, just that we heard heard teachers say that they get their kids do exceptional writing when they come back from the garden because they've experienced something that they can write about, and that all their senses, and they really are anxious to get it out on paper. Okay, that is the actual end of the program.
What a great image to end on. Thank you so much, Ian, and the whole team at Lower Columbia School Gardens. I put their web link in the chat for you. We are so grateful for all that you do for the Longview Kelso School District, and excited to learn more as your team moves forward. And thank you to all the teachers and educators who showed up today. We wish you success in your gardens. There's some more great information coming up in the next few sessions. We know some of your schools have new gardens. If you're like in the Evergreen or Vancouver schools, you have new gardens. Like, what do we do with those boxes? Don't worry, you're going to learn in the next 2 sessions. So hang in there, and we appreciate all that you do. So thank you for coming today, and enjoy your evening. Ian, as always, that was just jam-packed with great information, and your photos are the best. They're so inspiring.
We skimmed them off of our collection of literally 50,000 photos or something ridiculous like that. So we've been taking a lot of pictures. We don't know how to throw them away.
Yeah, well, they're pretty great. A smile in the garden is worth 1,000 words, right?
Yeah. I remember, I'm seeing Joni. I read the little survey that you did. I think, are you the person that's doing a bunch of stuff and has been doing it for quite a while? Greenhouse and all that?